Hey there, you awesome people. I hope your day has been nothing short of fantastic. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku Ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Izuku used to be quirkless, but that all changed when he sunk his teeth into an unusual fruit, granting him the power to stretch his body like rubber. With this newfound ability, he's on a quest to become the ultimate hero. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you're totally vibing with this what if scenario, drop me a comment and let your thoughts be known. And while you're at it, don't miss out on other mind-blowing what ifs on this channel. Alright, without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. The port was completely destroyed as soon as Izuku arrived. Quickly looking around, Izuku tried to call the others, only to find out he had no service. Pondering about why but shelving it for later, Izuku immediately switched to the short burst communicator. This is Deku, the port has been destroyed. No signs of villains here, said Izuku, hoping his message would get through and maybe get a response. Looking around, Izuku had been ready to rush to the Shimano residence when he heard a groan. Quickly whirling around, he quickly went to the source of the noise, quickly lifting up a wall to reveal a man who had been pinned down by the attack. Underneath him was a puppy had it been cradling. He must have been caught by the attack by surprise, and tried protecting his pet, thought Izuku, as he managed to fireman carry the injured man while taking the puppy. I have injured it, going to scout the port for more signs of injured citizens, reported Izuku. Someone get over to the Shimano residence. Spread the word of evacuation. I got it, replied Monoma over the communicator, who happened to be patrolling near the area, relaying on the message to others. Monoma knew when there was a time and place for his flamboyant attempts of roasting 1A, and now was, where are the reinforcements? Cried Mineta as he felt his scalp bleeding. Any longer, and I can't hold them back anymore, along with something else, groaned Yuga, feeling his stomach rebelling against him. Just as another mummified object was about to hit them, it was blasted away by Katsuki, who had arrived. Katsuki blasted a bunch more mummified objects to clear the way, while Ijiro jumped in and punched away another object, followed by Tetsu kicking another trying to sneak up behind them. Denki was blasting away a few more with his electricity. Everyone, we're here to help, shouted Momo as she and a few others came to help. We got you distress call. Everybody else is helping evacuate the citizens. Yuga and Mineta were quickly escorted away, while the others began to spread out to find others or help Katsuki fight. Ijiro had been punching away a few when one of the bandages from Mummy caught his arms in a bind. Quickly hardening his arms to the point of unbreakable, Ijiro managed to cut through it with his arm's jagged edges, but even more bandages began to bind around him. Shit. Cursed Tetsu as he found himself being wrapped by more and more of Mummy's bandages. Katsuki quickly intervened, blowing up the ropes off the two, only to find himself surrounded by more of Mummy's wrappings. Before Mummy could completely take him hostage, though, someone tackled Katsuki out of the way, and instead was wrapped up by Mummy. Everything I catch moves according to my will, bragged Mummy. It doesn't work on living beings, but it does work with what they are wearing. Your costume will act as I order. I may have not gotten the target I wanted, but this works too. Katsuki flipped onto his feet before looking over to Mummy with a grin. You thinking of using him as a hostage, bandage boy? Shouted Katsuki. Think again. Oi, bug face, stop playing around and come out. Mummy looked at Katsuki in confusion before looking over to the person he had captured. Seconds later, blades sprouted all over the mummified figure, piercing through the bandage. Another second later, the blades began to move, shredding the bandages into pieces before Tageru Kamakiri landed on the ground. It's Jack Mantis, shouted Tageru as he rushed forward towards Mummy. TCH, scoffed Mummy as he began to use the objects he was controlling to hurl at Tageru, knowing trying to trap him wasn't an option. The ability to grow blades on his body at any time would hinder him from trapping Tageru, but he wasn't without options. However, before he could even try to hurl the mummified objects, Katsuki was already blasting them all into pieces. Mummy quickly tried to back away while pulling out his Kodachi, only to bump into an air wall made by Kasei, who had snuck behind him. The momentary surprise was enough for Tetsu and Ijiro to blitz toward him, leaving him helpless as his Kodachi would do nothing to their hardened state. Red right real steel, double sinker. Their fists slammed into Mummy's face, indenting before they punched right through Kasei's air barrier. Mummy tumbled for a bit before getting back up, feeling his face had been caved in. Before he could do anything though, Katsuki was already on him, his hand grabbing his face. Time to die, cackled Katsuki maliciously as the palms of his hands began to crackle before blasting Mummy into the ground. Mummy was clearly unconscious, so Momo quickly began creating ropes to tie up Mummy, while the others checked the surrounding area in case of civilians being trapped somewhere. Katsuki blasted himself away to search for more villains, more aiming towards the beach, where he knew another villain was currently fighting. Chimra grinned as he easily blocked Ojiro's tornado tail dance, pushing Ojiro away before grabbing some boulders that he broke from the ground, and tossing them at Ojiro. Ojiro moved to dodge them, but found himself trapped when another boulder came flying at him. Luckily, Fumikage swooped in to grab him and fly away from the projectile, before dropping him back on the ground once more, sending Dark Shadow at Chimera. Chimera wasn't even phased as he punched Dark Shadow on the head, sending it flying back with just brute force. The force from the impact was strong enough to send both Fumikage and Ojiro reeling back, even though they were still some distance away. "He's strong," gasped Niranjeki as he had Shoji hurl a rock at Chimera to try to distract him, using his quirk twin impact to send it flying even faster. Chimera caught the rock without any strain before tossing it back at Niranjeki at an even faster rate. "Duck!" shouted Satsuna as she sent her foot out and kicked Niranjeki's knee from behind, forcing him to bend down and just dodge the rock, though it's scrapped by his hair. "Don't lose focus." Chimera charged forward, punching Ojiro, who quickly put his tail and arms up in a cross block, but the punch was strong enough to send Ojiro flying, tumbling through the sand. Shoji ran forward, his arms raised up, but before he could even throw any punches, Chimera caught him with his clawed hands grasping Shoji's head, squeezing hard enough to cause Shoji to almost black out from the pain. "With that shape," hummed Chimera as he easily lifted Shoji up with just his arm, "you were made fun of before, right? Don't hate your parents for giving you that form." Shoji groaned as he felt Chimera's grip grow even tighter around his head. He tried to focus on escaping, but it was getting harder to think. Luckily, Tenyu came blazing in with a kick to the face of full power and speed, enough to distract Chimera and loosen his grip on Shoji, letting Tenyu grab him and rush away. A full power kick and he wasn't even blown away, much less phased, thought Tenyu with a worried look as he took Shoji to safety. Shoto quickly froze Chimera's feet, while Hanta wrapped Chimera's arms and torso with his tape that had Kajiro's glue on it to make sure it bound him. "Now?" shouted Tenyu as Fumikage dropped her Kido toward Chimera, who had already bulked up on sugar, ready to punch Chimera with all his strength. Unfortunately, Chimera broke out easily, rearing his fist back. Kido quickly changed to a defensive position, using a cross-arm block in time to block Chimera's punch. Kido had judged that he wouldn't be able to land an attack properly in time, and had judged correctly, considering the punch not only sent Kido flying, but Kido felt radius and ulnar bone fracture from the punch. If it had been his skull taking the impact, Kido didn't want to know what would have happened. Kido flipped onto the sand before finally stopping, though only because he went right through a boulder. "I know it's just children, but you lot have to do better than that," mocked Chimera as he waltzed forward without a care. Shoto responded with another wave of ice, only for Chimera to use brute force to not only smash it aside, but even affect Shota from the shockwave, before Chimera jumped forward to pulverize him. Hanta quickly pulled Shota to the side in time to prevent him from becoming a splat on the sand, as dust flew up into the air. As the dust cleared, they could see Chimera being wrapped up by vines from a bar, but he easily broke out of it once more. Knowing they couldn't easily engage him in close quarters combat, Tenyu and Fumikage tried to use ranged attacks by hurling some boulders at him, only for their attacks to be blocked by a simple stomp from Chimera. "You'll have to try harder than that, hero," shouted Chimera as he charged forward. Shota tried to switch it up by using his fire, only for Chimera to counter by firing an even larger flame that overpowered Shota's flames. Shota quickly switched to his ice, creating an ice wall to defend them all from the flames. As the flames faded away, the group looked wary at the villain who was easily handling them, even though he was outnumbered. Miharu and Kasuma were running back to their home, hoping it would be safer there when it promptly blew up as soon as they saw it. "I found it," stated 9 as he slowly walked towards the children, his eyes glowing yellow, Type B cellular activation. "Boy, I will steal your quirk. But do not worry, I will not kill you." Miharu panicked as she saw 9 coming closer, and immediately made a huge pink kamemi to attack him. 9 immediately saw through the illusion and walked forward uncaringly as it disappeared. Before 9 could grab Katsuma and take his quirk, a black and yellow blur rushed forward, swooping and taking the children away through the forest. "A speed quirk? No, it seems like one, but it's not," mused 9, his eyes glowing yellow before reverting back to gray before following them, motioning for the 2 cloaked figures to follow. The blur suddenly began to slow down to reveal Monoma panting as he carried the 2 children to the edge of the forest. "You 2 go. I'll handle things here," breathed out Monoma as he turned around, digging out a small box before opening it. Inside the box were strands of hair from all his classmates from 1B and some of 1A that were willing to donate a strand of hair when asked. Each hair was separated from each other as not to confuse whose hair was who, and straightened out and held by tiny clamps on the top and bottom of the box. Above and below the strand of hair were numbers, and inside the lid case were numbers and names attached to them. For instance, he had the hair at number 1 belonging to Yusetsu, number 2 belonging to Sen, and etc. The case he had was capable of housing up to 30. The names themselves were written in erasable ink, so he could erase and replace when needed. Normally, just having someone's hair wasn't enough to give him the person's quirk, especially if it was detached from the said person. However, thanks to May and Melissa and science, they managed to allow Monoma to replicate someone's quirk through said hair. All he had to do was press which numbers he wanted, close the case, flip open a small panel with a thumb scanner, and press his thumb on it, and said quirks would be copied to him. The only problem was that once copied, the hair would burn up into ashes, unable to be copied again until a new strand was placed. Still, it was much easier to have access to quirks, now admitted Monoma. What he didn't want to admit was that it was very much due to Izuku, who had suggested such thing. Having no time to be in denial for the moment, Monoma took in the quirk's mind control, solid air, horn cannon, and steel. I need backup, villain seems to be chasing after the kids, said Monoma into his earbud, hoping the short burst radio would be able to transmit his message, location, near the Shimano residence. What do you want with the kids? Shouted Monoma as he saw Nine drawing closer, hoping to bait him into speaking. When the man didn't respond, Monoma clicked his tongue in annoyance before switching to horn cannon, firing at Nine. Nine responded by creating an air wall that blocked the horns. A barrier? Is it your quirk? Questioned Monoma as he fired a barrage of horns at Nine, before controlling two of them to attack Nine from behind. Nine barely glanced at incoming horns before using his air wall to create a powerful air burst that flew towards Monoma's barrage, breaking through them all. Shit. Panicked Monoma as he switched to solid air, creating an air wall with his breath that managed to block the air burst, albeit barely. Nine raised his other hand, his fingertips glowing before firing out purple lasers that broke through the air wall. Monoma quickly changed into steel, tanking the purple laser beams. He has more than one quirk. Questioned Monoma. Is he copying or is it something else? Seeing no other choice, Monoma charged forward, rearing his arm back to punch Nine, only to be blocked by another air wall that didn't even budge, though Monoma could see several stacked against each other this time. I see. The copy quirk that lets you use others. Though there seems to be either a time limit or usage limit, said Nine as his eyes glowed yellow, but you can only use one quirk at a time. An interesting quirk worth stealing so I can preview. Don't waste my space when I steal others, only to find out I can't use it. Monoma couldn't even respond to that when Nine let go of the air wall and grabbed Monoma by the head. Stealing? Thought Monoma as he panicked, he can steal quirks. Is that why he's able to use so many different quirks? He must have a scanning quirk to figure mine out so fast. Monoma felt something slipping out of his body, like his soul was being torn. So Monoma did the only thing he could do. He used his quirk while he still had it and copied Nine's quirk. Immediately, Monoma felt a backlash from copying Nine with a roaring headache that threatened to split his head, but having tried to copy Izuku and Melissa's quirk before, and having an even worse backlash, Monoma gritted through the pain. Sifting through everything, Monoma found the source of what was pulling his quirk away, copied it, and immediately used it to try to steal that quirk away. Nine felt something was wrong when the quirk he was stealing wasn't going smoothly. Instead, he felt as if something was tugging on the copy of All for One he had gotten from Dr. Garaki, All for One's personal doctor. The two of them struggled against each other for a while, a reaction occurring deep within Monoma. Before Nine grew tired of the struggle, giving up on stealing the copy quirk. It wasn't worth the time he was wasting and threw Monoma into the ground. Before Monoma could react, Nine blasted him with another air burst, sending him flying out of the forest and into the hill. Oh, groaned Monoma as he tried to get up despite all his body telling him he was in serious pain. He didn't even have time to activate steel before he got blasted back. Mister? Shouted the kids as they saw Monoma trying to rise up. Rats. I thought I told you to run. Hissed Monoma as he felt his bones crackle. It felt like every single one of them was fractured. Mahara and Kasuma were scared stiff, especially when Nine came out of the forest. Monoma tried to use a horn cannon, but something was going on with his body that was throwing everything out of whack. So he did what he could only do, and use his body to protect the kids, especially when Nine fired another laser beam that hit him in the shoulder. I said run. Shouted Monoma as he managed to stand up again. Mahara couldn't take it before using her quirk once more to create an illusion of Monoma that towered over them all, attracting quite a bit of attention. Someone help us please, shouted Mahara. Mere seconds later, Katsuki came sprinting forward, sliding right beside Nine before firing a fully loaded explosion from his gauntlet. Nine, however, was able to react quickly and blocked it with an air wall. Finally found you villain. Grinned Katsuki, now watch brats, as to why I'll become the #1 hero. Katsuki began his assault, and despite being surprised by the fact Nine had multiple quirks, he managed to dodge Nine's attack. On his assault, Nine threw up another air wall, only for Katsuki to blast himself to the side, sliding right behind Nine. Nine quickly turned around, an air wall forming in his hand, only for Katsuki to kick his hand away. He had noted that for the air wall to form, it had to originate from his hand. I'm too strong for you, bragged Katsuki, an explosion priming in his hand when he was hit by a gigantic blue snake-like creature that sprouted from Nine's back. It was another quirk that Nine had kept hidden in case of situations like this, Hydra. The Hydra had lifted Katsuki up into the air, ready to slam Katsuki into the floor, when a fist punched through its body of it, freeing Katsuki. Kasuma looked up to see Izuku already free-falling down towards Nine with his other arm already thrown behind him, twisting clockwise. 9 scanned with his eyes before noticing the amount of power that Izuku was emitting was overwhelming, and immediately switched to his primary and most powerful quirk, weather manipulation. He called upon lightning to strike Izuku and Katsuki. His hand was already up to hurl another explosion. The thunderstruck blinded them all for a bit, while destroying the city's electrical grid. The citizens and student heroes found themselves without electricity in the darkening sunlight. That should take care of those two, muttered 9 as he turned to face Kasuma. Watch out, shouted one of the cloaked men. 9 turned back to see Izuku grinning as he charged forward with no effect on him. 9's eyes would have popped out as well as his mouth drop into the ground if it wasn't for the fact his face was covered. Izuku slammed his corkscrew punch into his face, sending 9 was sent hurtling back into the forest. Izuku would have followed up if not for one of the cloaked figures suddenly attacking him with his arms transforming into cone-shaped blades. Izuku quickly blocked the slash with his gauntlets, his eyes narrowing in on the blade. It looked very familiar to him. Izuku pushed the man back before whipping out a kick toward the man's face, who jumped back and barely dodged the kick. The kick, however, forced the man's hooded cloak to fall back, revealing his face. "You?" hissed Izuku. It was hard to forget the man's face. He was, after all, one of the men responsible for invading Island, and the one who had caught Melissa. "Long-time brat," grinned Swickle. "I still owe you for stomping me through all those floors." "How did you escape?" snarled Izuku. "Pure luck really," scoffed Swickle. "When Wolfram started making a mess of the tower, he swept me away from the whole mess, whether on purpose or not. I managed to escape with my life. I've been waiting for the moment where I get to gut you and that bitch Shields." Izuku growled as he charged forward, only for his senses to suddenly blare at him. Izuku stopped just as Swickle jumped to the side. Right before his jump though, the sound of gunfire could be heard from behind him, the bullet just missing Swickle, piercing through his cloak as the bullet slammed into Izuku's right shoulder, right through his shirt. "Guess you should meet my cousin, Bullet Mouth," grinned Swickle as a male with a revolver barrel for a mouth that transformed back to a regular mouth. "It'll be the last name you'll know." Before Izuku had time to question that, a flock of crows suddenly came in between them all. Izuku looked back to see Shuichi grabbing the kids, while Akako lightened Katsuki and Monoma with her quirk. Pony used her horns to lift up both of them and taking them back with her. "We need to regroup," said Achako as she passed by Izuku. Izuku hesitated for a second, wanting to continue the fight, before deciding to retreat. Katsuki and Monoma were injured, and the two kids were still in the danger zone. Slice had arrived after finishing her job of destroying the harbor, only to see 9 being punched back into the forest with a punch. Slice quickly hurried to 9 to see him bent over in pain from not only the punch, but from the after effect of using his primary quirk. Seeing him affected this much, Slice had no choice but to shoot out a flare to signal a general retreat for now. Everyone in town had gathered up at one of the larger buildings for their own safety. Class 1A and 1B were busy distributing supplies to the civilians. Momo and Denki were abusing their quirks past their limits in order to help keep up demand and supply electricity for the building. In the meantime, Mei and Melissa were busy cannibalizing anything they could get their hands on to make a working generator, so they could ease the burden on Momo and Denki. "Melissa," said Izuku as he walked towards the two mechanics, "how's everything?" "A bit overwhelming," admitted Melissa as she wiped the sweat off her brow. "I'm not sure how, but that thunderstruck fried a lot of circuitries around the town. Luckily, we have Momo to help supply some of the parts." Izuku nodded, thankful that his girlfriends were so talented. "One of the villains that attacked is the same one that attacked Island," whispered Izuku, causing Melissa to stiffen. "The same one that gave you that cut." Melissa's hand automatically touched her arm where she had been cut. Though it had long healed, a tiny scar could be seen where she had been cut. "He had an accomplice that shot me with this bullet," said Izuku as he pulled out a bullet with a syringe for the tip. However, the tip was bent inwards, as if it had hit a brick wall. Izuku had sensed the intent of the shot, and quickly used Haki to protect himself. Underneath his costume, his skin had turned obsidian black in time to prevent the bullet from actually breaking the skin and injecting whatever was in it. "I'll take a look," nodded Melissa as she carefully took the bullet, sealing it in a plastic bag. At another location, Slice had barged into a house, using candles to light up the place before placing 9 on a bed to let him rest. "You two, go secure supplies," ordered Slice. "Mummy and Chimera should be with us soon." Swickle had been ready to complain, only for Slice's hair to suddenly turn into sharp blades, each one hovering just a few centimeters away from his and Bullet Mouth's throats. "Don't complain, unlike the others, you two have yet to prove yourself powerful. You let 9 get hurt despite being near him," hissed Slice. "Now go, or else I decide that you aren't needed." Swickle and Bullet Mouth quickly followed orders, not wanting to get on their new boss's bad side. "Bro, how long are we going to follow them?" asked Bullet Mouth as they broke open some crates to find food. "Until we can get a better gig," gritted Swickle. "Island is still on the lookout for me, since I was never captured. Until now, we'll have to lay low and stay under someone's umbrella. But we'll soon hit the jackpot. Especially since that green-haired brat has to be dying from the bullet he was hit with. Nothing could live through that unless they have a poison removal quirk." And even then, the rate of spread is fast for that poison. No way they can save him. Both 1A and 1B were in a room, conversing about their next steps. They couldn't go charging in without endangering the citizens. The electrical grid and telecommunications had been destroyed, so calling for help was out of the question. Momo had managed to construct a working drone with Enso's message that would fly over to the mainland, but even then, it would take 6 hours to reach. Koji had also used his quirk to get a seagull to fly over to the mainland, with Enso's beacon message tied to his leg, but that was no guarantee that it was faster than the drone. And that wasn't including how long it would take for a response team to form. Kazuki and Monoma were still out of commission, but Kasuma was helping them heal with his quirk, cell activation. Not to mention, they did not know what Nine's goal was. "I know what the villains are after," piped in Kasuma, having walked into the room after finishing up with Monoma and Kazuki. He ignored his sister's attempt to stop him, his eyes set. "The villain said he wanted to steal my power." Everyone began murmuring amongst themselves at that statement. Izuku clenched his fist as he recalled All for One. But the question was how another quirk like All for One could exist. Plans were quickly made and dashed as they tried to figure something out. Kasuma gritted his teeth as he made his suggestion, "Hand me over to the villain. He said that he wouldn't kill me, so it's fine if I lose my quirk, as long as everyone on the island is safe." "Out of the question," stated Izuku, causing everyone to fall silent as they looked over at him. "We have no idea if the villain would even keep his word. His goal afterward may end up hurting more people." "He's right," grunted Katsuki as he appeared from the door. "Plus, why should we give what the villain wants? We're the heroes, we'll win this shit." "That quirk," grunted Monoma as he managed to walk in the door, "is super useful. It's able to activate the cells to increase regeneration and enhance physical performance. I can see why the villain wants it and why we shouldn't give it to him." Monoma cleared his throat. "That villain called Nine tried to steal my quirk. However, I managed to copy it and prevented him from doing so. But my quirk is on the fritz right now, and I can't get it to work properly for now. But it feels like it's evolving or something. But enough about that. From what I could tell when being in contact with that villain, his primary quirk was some sort of weather manipulation, while his other quirk is capable of stealing up to 8 quirks. He has 5 filled, but can steal 3 more. It would be unwise to engage in close combat against him, otherwise, he might steal it." The others began to mutter to themselves once more. Monoma, however, glanced over to Izuku with a pointed gaze. Izuku gave him a small shrug, signifying he wasn't sure if he was safe, but considering All for One failed to steal his quirk, he was sure he was pretty safe. "He's also injured," continued Monoma. "Something about his quirk is making his body fail. That's why he's looking for cell activation for himself." "Makes sense," nodded Itsuka. "It explains why they aren't attacking yet, even if Izuku got a good punch in." Izuku nodded as he turned to Katsuma and Mihora. "Don't worry. We'll protect you and the citizens. We'll kill those villains," declared Katsuki as he pounded his fist into his palm, creating a small explosion. "Agreed," nodded Shoto. "We should fight." Soon, everyone began to feel their spirits rouse up as they stood up, each one of them declaring their intent to fight. "Then let's do this," grinned Itsuka as she raised her hand. "Remember our school motto. Go beyond, plus ultra," resounded the heroes. A map was soon laid before them all, planning their attacks. Any close-quarter combat members were quickly shifted away from Nine, as it was too dangerous for them to fight him. Only Izuku was the exception, as they all saw All for One try to steal Izuku's quirk, only to fail. While devising a plan to separate the villains, Melissa came in with May. "I got the analysis from the bullet," said Melissa. "It was a deadly poison that would spread throughout the body. If you had been hit by it, then it would have certainly taken you out of the fight. It might have even killed you. They meant to take you out." That sent a chill up all their spines. Izuku was one of their strongest, if not the strongest fighter out of all of them. If he was out, then the fight would have been much harder. "Then it's good that it didn't work," said Izuku, pushing past the subject. "From what we can tell, we need to force Nine to use his quirks, until he can't handle it anymore. After that, it'll be easier to arrest him." "I have an idea," piped in Juzo. "We should hide Midoriya." "What?" asked many of them. "Hear me out," said Juzo calmly. "From what we've gathered, they expect Midoriya to be out of commission. If they see him there, Nine will most likely try to conserve his strength to fight him. We want to hit him hard and fast, and force him to use up his quirk. He might delegate his partners to fight while he stays safely in the back. So instead, we have him hidden until the last second." Yuzo gave a small grin before continuing. "Plus, let us handle the work. We can't always depend on heavy hitters like you all the time. We'll show everyone that they can also depend on us." The others nodded in agreement, causing Izuku to sigh before agreeing to the plan. He didn't like it, and was ready to be the first wave to attack, but he had to trust his fellow classmates. After all, they were up-and-coming pros too. "I want to join in," stated Melissa with a stern gaze. "I want to participate in the group taking on Swickle. We have a score to settle, after all." Seeing her unwavering gaze, the others agreed to let her in, though made her promise not to take any unnecessary risks. Soon, a plan was made, and so everyone gathered the citizens to travel to the castle ruins, where they would initiate their plan. As the sun began to rise, the heroes of 1A and 1B stood in front of the castle ruins, along with May and Melissa, ready to fight and protect. 9. They seemed to have gathered at Mountain Castle, reported Slice as she landed on the beach side. Using her hairs to slow her descent, they took the target with them. So they're changing this to a siege, scoffed Chimra. As if it matters in the end, spat out Swickle. We move in, declared 9. Soon, our dreams will become a reality. Some children pretending to be heroes won't stop us. As they walked towards the castle ruins, 9 glanced over to Swickle. You sure the bullet works? Asked 9. Positive, grinned Swickle, pointing to his cousin Bulletmouth. We've tested it before on others. That kid won't be an obstacle. Chimera scoffed at the use of poison, but chose to remain silent. 9 merely hummed before continuing on. As much as he didn't want to admit it, Izuku Midoriya was the biggest threat to him. The teenager who all for one tried to steal from, only for it to backfire. When he scanned Izuku, it was a jumbled mess that he couldn't tell how to identify. There was a strength factor, but there were other factors mixed in that 9 hadn't been able to identify before being punched in the face. He assumed being composed of rubber is another one, as he did see Izuku stretch, and most apparently immune to lightning strikes. No matter what, even if he was up, 9 was confident he could handle him. May stood up on the highest point, using her quirk to zoom in on the shore. I see them, reported May before jumping off to return to safety. Inside the cavern with the citizens to hold the last line was Sato, Koji, Toru, Yusetsu, Sen, Itsuka, Monoma, and Jiroto. Sato was still injured from his fight, and the others were either close-range combatants or had quirks useful in dealing with cave-ins. Itsuka hated being sidelined, but a quirk made it risky for her to engage 9 in close combat, and her natural leadership big sister aura made it easier to calm down the citizens. Monoma was still having trouble with his quirk on the fritz, and so had to retreat, much to his dismay. May quickly joined them, her hand up to her ears, as she gave them the thumbs up. Izuku was hidden in the shadows of the entrance to the cave, ready to rush out if needed. In the first wave, Momo was looking over the cliff with her monocular, calculating the distance. With a shout, Yuga came out of his hiding spot, having fully charged up his naval laser to max charge. Supernova plus Ultra. Yuga's naval laser fired from his navel, forcing the villains to separate from 9, while he blocked it with his air wall. They were even farther as Yuga began to fire more laser bursts from his shoulder and knees. Momo, using the last of her strength and lipids, pulled out 2 giant cannons and fired them toward the villains, separating them even further. Slice landed on a ground that quickly shattered, dropping her into a cave. Chimera ended up jumping off a cliff to avoid being blasted. Bulletmouth and Sorkill jumped into a river nearby, letting the current sweep them away. Phase 1 complete, panted Momo as she and Yuga secured themselves away. Momo took out a specialized high-fat bar that May and Melissa had managed to cook up with the remaining leftovers that hadn't been eaten. Momo had initially refused, stating the food could have been put to good use to the civilians, but the two assured her that they had used leftovers nobody had wanted and created it. Taking a bite, she discovered it tasted like apples, and pondered about it for a second, before deciding to push it aside. The more lipids she could recover, the more she could help out. Going to be riding these fights from beginning to end, so no skipping around. 9 will be last. Cavern. Slice fired strands of her hair out towards the ceiling, breaking free from the rubble she had been in before looking around to see herself in a cave. So they split us up, scoffed Slice before hearing something splash above her. Quickly looking above her, she saw stalactites falling down toward her, and quickly flipped away to dodge them. At the same moment, she fired strands of her hair toward the source. Mina quickly yelped as she jumped out of the way. Fumikage rushed in to attack with Dark Shadow, only for Slice to easily parry his attack. Ashido. Leave this us, declared Fumikage as Dark Shadow retreated back, clucking over him with claws in his hands. We can handle her. The darkness is our territory. Cocky brat, smirked Slice as she manipulated strands of her hair into multiple blades, while knives popped out of her gloves on each finger. The two clashed against each other, but despite the darkness giving Dark Shadow more power, Fumikage found himself on the backpedal after each clash, due to the variety of attacks and flexibility, as well as the technique Slice was showing. What happened to all the grandeur? Mocked Slice as she got into a handstand, aiming a kick to the head with a knife sticking out of her boots. Try saying that again. Her hair split into several blades that shot forward towards Fumikage, who managed to block them, but the attack forced his arms back, leaving him open. Slice grinned as she raised her leg up high to land an axe kick when Fumikage suddenly lowered his head. Slice looked in confusion, thinking that Fumikage was using Dark Shadow to protect himself when she saw a fist rising right out from Dark Shadow. Surprise bitch! Shouted Shihai as he came flying out of Dark Shadow, landing an uppercut against Slice. However, Slice had reacted fast enough by swinging her head back, minimizing the damage. It was then Slice realized that Fumikage had said us instead of me. She originally thought he was counting his own quirk as another person, but in reality, Shihai had been hiding within dark shadow. Shihai quickly dove into the shadows of the cave, making Slice realize the danger she was in now. Especially when Fumikage came charging in once more, this time causing Slice to be on the back foot. Especially when Shihai kept appearing from the shadows to trip her, grabbing her leg every now and then. Slice only managed to keep up thanks to her reactions, while using her hair to stab the ground every time, while making sure to position herself so she wouldn't get cornered. It's too dark here. Needs some light, growled Slice before firing strands of her hair up toward the ceiling in hopes of making more holes. That hope was shattered when Kasei's quirk Solid Air suddenly appeared, blocking her attempts. Haha, hope you weren't too fond of the light, laughed Kasei before jumping to cover when Slice fired some more strands at him. Slice growled as she had to dodge Fumikage attacks and Shihai's attempts to trip her up once more. She tried to fire more strands into the ceiling, only for Kasei to intercept each attack. Even though some managed to break through when she fired a more concentrated burst, the majority of its momentum had been taken away from Kasei's Solid Air, not allowing it to have enough energy to pierce through the ceiling. If I could just have one of these brats stop attacking me for a second, I could easily break through the brat's inferior version of Nine's airwall. Scowled Slice to herself. She didn't realize that Kasei's Solid Air had been distributed to a wide area to prevent easy shots, and that if Kasei had made them smaller, more concentrated, it wouldn't be easy to break through. Suddenly, Slice heard a splash on her foot and peeked down to see she had stepped into some sort of puddle. She saw that it was leading to a source, but before she could do anything, she saw a red blur coming her way. More specifically, it was a Jiro sliding down a slightly acidic trail that Mina had been making that was more slippery if anything. Fumikage and Shihai had been leading Slice to the trail, while Shihai schemed, making it seem like that he was trying to bait Slice towards a place with more shadows, forcing her to focus on the shadows, and not the acid trail. Incoming! Roared Jiro as he slid across the acid trail. He had taken a running start, sprinting as fast as he could before jumping onto the trail. Mina helped speed his acceleration by jumping on her back and kicking off him, sending him hurling forward even faster. In short, a human-sized comet was flying right towards Slice, who couldn't react fast enough to dodge. Even if I can't dodge, it's foolish to charge at me with no defense. Roared Slice as she focused all her hair on Ijiro, firing multiple strands before forming them into blades to skewer him. Ijiro activated Unbreakable mode, tanking through all the hits before the blades smashed into him. Slice watched in shock that Ijiro crashed into her blades without hesitation, and through it all, hadn't been skewered. Instead, her hair blades were being forced back as Ijiro continued forward. Slice instead decided to use this to push herself back to buy herself time, but before she could do that, Ijiro grabbed her hair, keeping her still for a second. Mina! Roared Ijiro as he kept a firm grip of all her hair. Acid shot! Shouted Mina as she fired a stream of one of her strongest acids right on the hair. Slice watched the acid eat right through her hair, regardless of its hardened state. Her long hair that went past her thighs, which she carefully brushed and took care of every day, was now cut short so that it ended just below her chin. You brats! Screamed Slice as she began to indiscriminately fire all around her despite her artillery being cut short. She was getting desperate as these brats might not only defeat her, but could get in Nine's way. The desperation shots managed to push back Fumikage's dark shadow, while Shihai had to run away in the shadow to a safer hiding spot. Ijiro crossed his arms in front of him, taking the punishment without too much trouble. Kasei created a thick barrier in front of him to protect himself from the barrage. Mina, however, was the key target for Slice's rage. Mina ran, jumping into the air while flipping to keep her momentum going. She cartwheeled, front flipped, and did all acrobatic tricks to keep herself moving, but she was still hit in the leg by 3 of Slice's hair. Mina screamed in pain as she failed to stick her landing, but Kasei quickly fired an air wall underneath Mina to give her a softer landing, before creating another wall in front of her. Slice smirked at the girl's pain before hearing a roar of rage coming toward her. Quickly turning around, she saw Ijiro leaping up into the air with his hands above his head, his sharpened fingers gleaming. Slice quickly fired at Ijiro, but it had no effect on him. This is for Mina, bitch! Roared Ijiro as he struck Slice with a dual tiger claw downward strike. Slice managed to jump back fast enough, but Ijiro's clawed hands managed to rake down her mask and a good chunk of her armored clothing, leaving her rather sizable chest exposed. However, Ijiro didn't care about that as he charged forward with a series of tiger claw strikes. One of the extra lessons Ijiro had been involved with when seeing Rikai was learning Fujopai, otherwise tiger claw style. Slice kept backpedaling, trying to find some room while shooting her strands of hair at Ijiro, despite knowing it was useless when she felt someone grab her leg and trip her. Shit. Forgot about the others. Thought Slice, but it was too late. Ijiro was already on her, leaving her with the only way to try to parry his attacks. She managed to knock a few away, but Ijiro managed to twist her parry away, grabbing her shoulder before raking his fingers down her arm. Slice screamed in pain as the fingers pierced through the skin, leaving a trail of blood and exposed muscle. Before she could do anything else, Fumikage had Dark Shadow trip her in his grip. Slice tried to struggle to escape, only to stop when Ichiro's hand grabbed her throat, his fingers gently prodding at the skin with its sharpened edge. Slice froze, unwilling to move in case he decided to rip her throat out. Ichiro smirked before bringing his other fist up, smacking Slice with a left hook to the temple, knocking her out. "That's one down," said Fumikage as he and Shihai began to wrap Slice up. "We'll need to head back as soon as possible." Ichiro nodded, but quickly hurried over to Mina, making sure she was alright while fussing over her wounds. Luckily, it didn't seem too deep to pull out the hardened hair. Shoreside. Bullet Mouth and Swickle pulled themselves out of the stream, taking in some deep breaths. "A fucking cannon," coughed Swickle. "I'll gut that bitch when I get the chance." Swickle suddenly felt a chill up his spine, and quickly turned, turning his arms into blades, while raising them just in time to block blades that clashed against his arm. "The blade user, huh? Looks like you might be fun to cut up," grinned Tageru as he jumped back. "Show me what you got." "Cocky brat," shouted Swickle as he swung his blade arms at Tageru, who parried them with his own blades. The two got into a sword fight, swinging their arms as their swords clashed against each other. "I'll shoot him," shouted Bullet Mouth as he aimed his mouth muzzle at Tageru, but before he could spit out a bullet, a capture scarf wrapped around his waist, while a hand suddenly sprouted from his shoulders and covered his eyes. "Wait, what's going on?" questioned Bullet Mouth before he was suddenly flung into the air away from the two. Shinso pulled Bullet Mouth away before trying to hurl him headfirst into the sand. Bullet Mouth, however, managed to spit out some bullets towards Shinso, forcing him to let go and dodge out of the way, letting the villain recover back onto his feet. "Asshole, die," spat Bullet Mouth as he fired a barrage of bullets at Shinso. Shinso began moving, taking an erratic pathway to get closer to Bullet Mouth. Bullet Mouth kept firing when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Taking a look to see what just tapped him, he saw an arm with a hand that had sprouted from his arm, and wondered why a limb was there. He didn't get to ponder much longer when the said limb slapped him in the face. Bullet Mouth raged at that slap, trying to look for the source when he saw Shinso being much closer to him thanks to the distraction. Bullet Mouth quickly threw a punch, only for Shinso to parry it away before punching him in the solar plexus. Bullet Mouth felt his breath being taken away, unable to spit out any bullets, and tried to jump back to escape. Before he could do so though, Shinso's capture rope had already wrapped around his arm, pulling him back forward. Bullet Mouth immediately crossed his arms to protect himself, only to take a low kick behind the knee, forcing him to bend down. Two arms sprouted on Bullet Mouth's shoulder, grabbing his wrist and wrenching them apart to leave him open to take a knee to the face. "It's over," intoned Shinso. "Like hell it," started Bullet Mouth, only for his remark to fall short and his eyes glazed over. Shinso sighed as he had the villain under his control with his quirk. He had used this as training for his close quarters combat, but in the end, he needed help getting in close. "Looks like I still have some things to improve on," muttered Shinso before ordering the villain to knock himself out. Back with Tageru and Swordkill, the two were duking it out against each other. Their blades clashed against each other several times. "I'm getting tired of this warm-up," taunted Tageru before suddenly whipping his leg out, forming a blade from his kick. Swickle could only swear as he blocked it, sending him back a few steps. Tageru began attacking viciously with blades being formed from any of his limbs. Before Swickle could try to do anything, limbs suddenly sprouted from all over his body, each hand grabbing a vital joint on his body before bending him backwards a little. Swordkill would have resisted, but the grabs had been timed perfectly when Tageru had knocked him back hard enough that caused his defense to crumble. Tageru's upward slice forced Swordkill's arms up into the air, leaving him defenseless at that moment. "What's with these arms?" shouted Swordkill in surprise. "They're mine," answered Melissa, coming out of her hiding spot with her arms crossed over each other. "You?" blinked Swickle in surprise. "You're Shield's daughter, aren't you? Aren't you supposed to be quirkless?" "I was functionally quirkless," replied Melissa. "It was laying dormant inside me. That attempt on my life and my dad was enough for me to awaken my quirk." Of course, Melissa wasn't going to tell the truth and say that she ate a disgusting fruit that gave her her quirk. "Well, you have me trapped pretty well, but that's all you can do, isn't it?" blustered Swickle. "Not that I mind these soft hands all over me. You could go a little lower if you want." Tageru was about to bark out a reply for such a lewd statement when he caught the look on Melissa's face, and flinched. At first, he was angry about his opponent being stolen, but considering the history the two had, he was willing to let that go. When Swickle let out that comment, he was ready to retort when he caught sight of a face he didn't want to encounter. Sure, he saw frustration and embarrassment in Melissa's eyes. But those were not the main emotions currently on display. No, Melissa was currently smiling, but that smile wasn't her usual happy smile. The face Melissa displayed right now showed undisguised sadism, something Tageru was sure that it should have belonged to Midnight. No, it seemed even more violent. "Oh? Then let me show you just how soft these hands can be," said Melissa with a malevolent grin as more hands sprouted out all over Swickle's body. Swickle, at first, didn't seem too worried until he noticed he was slowly being forced into a position that he couldn't possibly humanely do. No, that doesn't bend that way, shouted Swickle in a panic as his spine was being bent backward further than he was comfortable with. Another hand sprouted near his ear, though this hand had a mouth on the palm of its hand. It will soon, whispered Melissa through the mouth she had created. I thought you wanted to feel how soft my hands were. Not like this, panicked Swickle in his mind as he was being pushed to his limits. You should embrace our school's saying, said Melissa, where we always push to our limits and break through them. Go beyond, plus ultra clutch. With that last statement, Melissa closed her real hands into fists, as if grabbing something. At that same moment, Swickle felt all the hands around him tense and pull as hard as they could. He also heard something crack, but he was in too much pain that he fainted. Tagada gulped as he saw Melissa bend Swickle's back in half, breaking his spine. Being honest, Melissa's quirk was one of the most versatile he had seen. The ability to sprout limbs from any surface to attack. At first, Tagada scoffed, thinking that he could easily overpower it by sprouting blades all over his body to counter it. But seeing her break a spine in half made her shiver. If she could improve on that speed, then it would be near impossible to avoid her attacks. Good thing she's on support course and one of us than a villain, thought Tagada. Like sighed. Chimera sighed as he looked around the area. Looks like they managed to get me on my own, admitted Chimera. Suddenly, Tsu's tongue wrapped around his leg and dragged him into the water. Chimera was unable to react in time, but just as he was about to grab the offending tongue, Tsu already let go and was already jumping out of the water. What was that for? Thought Chimera before noticing a red disc underneath him in the water. Before he could even react to it, Denki already unleashed his quirk. 2 million volt targeted shock. Chimera was slammed with a charge of 2 million volts underwater. Looks like our plan worked, said Tenya as he carefully looked over the water. Nice job. Wonder if that'll take him out, grinned Tetsu. As much as I would hope it would, I'm afraid it is too soon to be so optimistic, said Shoji. As if reinforcing Shoji's statement, Chimera came bursting out of the water, quickly shaking off the shocks. As shocking as that was, it wasn't enough, huffed Chimera as he took out a cigar, putting it in his mouth. Now I'm going to get serious. With a huff, flames came out from the side of his mouth, lighting up his cigar. Don't think we weren't holding back either, growled Tetsu as his skin turned to metal. With the islanders now safely secured, we can go all out. We, replied Denki, still in dunce mode after using everything he had on his attack. Chimera scoffed as his arms bulged before feathers came out from his arms. Without warning, he rushed forward, intending to attack the one who had caused him to take the most damage, and who was currently defenseless, Akadenki. However, before he could even touch him, he was blindsided by literal words slamming into him, while green vines pulled Denki to safety. Let's do this, declared Tenya as he revved up his engines, Recipro Turbo. Tenya blazed forward with a kick, while the others charged forward to attack. Chimera huffed as he blocked all sorts of attacks without much trouble. It came to a point that Chimera was pondering why they repeatedly attacked him with such attacks. Weak. Pathetic. Shouted Chimera as he blocked a kick from Tenya, parried a punch from Tetsu before grabbing him and hurling him into a wall, blocking Shoji's octoblow with ease, before finding himself being wrapped up by bars vines. Pointless. You'll never, work. Began Chimera only to find his body seizing up. There's a reason why we kept attacking you with such repetitive attacks, grinned Tetsu, getting up from his impromptu flight into the wall. Every attack of ours was laced with something special. A special toxic mucus from Tsuyu that'll paralyze you, said Shoji as he shed off some of his extra arms to regrow new ones, enough to capture you, or if needed, beat you up. Don't think this is enough to hold me, growled Chimera as his muscles began to bulge. Let me show you why they called me a monster. His clawed hands and feet grew bigger, his body ripping through his coat completely, and horns sprouting out from his head. With a roar, he broke free of the bar's vines. And I'll start with you hiding in those bushes, roared Chimera, his eyes locking on a bar, who had been standing on the cliffs the whole time to provide support. Before he could do anything, though, a mushroom suddenly sprouted in front of his nose. Chimera looked at the mushroom in confusion before suddenly discovering mushrooms starting to sprout all over his body. His senses quickly told him that there were more people behind him, and turned around to see standing on the top of the small waterfall were Kanoko and Manga. Manga had made another onomatopoeia that turned up the humidity, allowing Kanoko to ready her quirk. She had been waiting for the chance to strike a Chimera, ensuring her spores would only hit Chimera. That chance had been when Chimera was temporarily paralyzed with the others far enough from being hit. Do you think this is enough to stop me? Laughed Chimera as he took a deep breath, intending to shoot out a beam of fire to destroy them all. However, upon doing so, he suddenly found it difficult to breathe. Splidgel lung strike. Kanoko smirked as her fungi, specifically Schizophilum common, began to grow inside Chimera's lungs. When Chimera took that deep breath, he had inhaled all those spores. Her smirk fell off when she saw the gleam in Chimera's eyes. He wasn't going to go down so easily. Right as Chimera was about to release a beam of fire, Tenyu was already in front of him, doing a somersault kick to the chin, forcing his head up. Chimera fired his breath up into the air, right where Tetsu was coming down. Due to the lack of oxygen, Chimera's fire breath wasn't a beam of fire, but his usual flame breath, but it did clear out some of the spores. Tetsu, however, didn't care as he tanked right through it with his quirk. That's hot, but it's nothing compared to my burning spirit, roared Tetsu as he punched Chimera right on the nose. Shoji had already rushed up to Chimera, winding his arm back. This time, he wasn't aiming for multiple blows, but rather one blow to end it all. All his arms morphed into one giant cluster of body parts. It was a move he had been planning on when he saw just multiple blows sometimes just wasn't enough. Expansion. Shoji's punch slammed into Chimera's back, where a loud crack could be heard from the impact before Chimera was sent flying into the water. Chimera briefly struggled before finding himself wrapped up tightly by bars vines. Then his eyes widened as he saw something flashing yellow from above the surface. Only, got one, more shot, groaned Denki as he fought through his short circuit. 1,000,000 volt targeted strike. Though weaker than his previous shock, it was enough to shock Chimera unconscious. Ibarra pulled up Chimera, but doing so once Chimera was truly unconscious. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.